Today on Ag News, we're talking the beef industry and what you should be doing for the new year of 2019, plus a beef school coming up. So stay tuned, we'll be right back. Hello everyone, welcome to Ag News for the new year. John, Duane here. How are you today, John?
Well,
nice weather outside.
Well, we've made it through the holidays, and hopefully we didn't put on too many extra pounds.
Oh, I don't know. I had a little bit extra. So.
I tried. I'm afraid to wait to find out.
But, that's the best way.
No, we're into a new year, and there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I think just whatever your interests are, whether it's school or business or whatever, farming, there's always something, and we are in a time of transition, and I guess today we're going to talk about some of the things happening now and how that kind of sets the table for the rest of the year.
Right. So we, as we're going along, it's now cold weather. Right. And so what should we start talking about for cold weather season? We were just talking off the air that we were the cows are just now trying to learn to walk on hard ground.
Well, it's something new that they haven't had to experience for a while. You know, I never heard the final figure, but there's no question, most people know that 2018 we had a lot of rain. Yes. I know the Cincinnati weather stations were, I don't know if we wound up with the second or third highest rainfall. So either way, and the evidence of that is you still see crops still standing out in the field. You see corn and soybeans.
Absolutely, a lot.
And until this ground freezes, they're probably going to stand there, and hopefully farmers will be able to complete that task. But it's made some challenges for livestock producers, and in particular today we're going to talk about beef. Because of the major livestock species, that's the one that's still mostly open pasture or open range type production. We don't typically confine beef cattle like we do hogs or chickens. So they are a little more prone or impacted by environmental stress. And some of the slides we got today, we're going to show some of that stress. Now this is a slide that I think most beef producers will cringe at, but it's been a common sight for the last 60, 75 days. You'll see, that's a round bale feeder. The bale's mostly eaten. You can see some of the hay in the background behind the animal laying down. And you look around the perimeter of that, you'll see mud, and then on out you'll see some green grass where the traffic isn't as big. So what happens is the cattle aren't crazy. They don't like to walk through the mud, so they'll get to a place that's solid. And if you look at the feet, you'll see a little bit of hay that they've pulled out of the ring,
just to make it a little better to stand.
It's a little solid, and we don't have this picture now, but I know cattlemen can relate to this. Baby calves will lay there, and that's a little scary because that does kind of put them in harm's way.
It does put them in a little danger.
Mature cow comes up, so I don't know what the environment is here underneath that, because I know a lot of farmers will use what they call the geotextile pads, like construction people use. They'll put this cloth down, and then they'll put rock on top of it, and that gives them a base. But even with that, you still see the slop and the mud around
on top of it.
On top of it, right? So the next slide is a little bit more of the same. Only this probably is not a case where we have geotextile cloth. You can see tractor tracks where they've taken bales out to that location, and you see in the top center of that picture kind of a mound or a pile. It looks like this particular situation, they don't use the rings where to cut down on hay wastage, and they've
just tore that bale apart
and you see
and used it as a way to stand
to bed, right? And they create this higher spot that actually gets them out of the water. I mean, you can see how the water accumulates closer to the front of the picture, and this has just been really common. And this adds stress to the animals. I mean, just looking at the fog and everything, this might be one of those days. It was in the upper 30s, low 40s, and we had just had a rain, or there's plenty of moisture in the air, and the animals, when they're in this situation, it's not bitter cold, but there's a lot of stress because they may be damp. You think about when you take a walk out in the rain and your clothes or your coat gets wet, you feel more of a chill.
Oh, yeah.
It changes your conditions, so to speak, and it does change what they eat and require.
Would you ever, John, put anything in there? Like, would you go get a load of sawdust or some kind of wood shavings or something and put in there to help dry up a little bit of that?
It's next to impossible, Duane, when you have that much moisture.
Right.
And what happens is they'll just keep pushing it down. You think about rock. Where you say you've got a dirt lane and you want to neaten it up so you're not tracking so much mud in your garage. Until there's a base, they'll just keep pushing it down.
It just keeps going and going.
And to prevent this, this is something that needs to be done in good weather.
Right. I agree.
I'm just saying for now.
Would farmers ever plan to put like a concrete pad?
Well, concrete.
Or is that a bad idea?
It's not a bad idea, but I mentioned the geotext. It's an investment. And the other side of it is if you have a smooth concrete surface, which most farmers, if they would put concrete out, would rough it or groove it. Like when they're putting the concrete down, take a broom or
a brush finish,
or take a rake and make lines in it. But
just to give the cows
traction.
Grip,
So that's why a lot of the farmers like the geotextile pads, because there's rock. It's a little rougher surface that they can get that traction on. So I think we got one more picture of this condition, and look at their legs. They get dirt on them, and I know some people cave in the fall, and sometimes their bellies get dirty, and their udders get dirty. So again, you kind of see a little. I don't know the corral or gate situation, but you see animals in the background. I can assure you, other than the animals being comfortable getting their bellies full at this hay ring, the cows out on the grass are definitely more comfortable, and they're probably staying cleaner than a cow that would lay around there. So I just started with these slides to give you a little background of what the situation, and I told you earlier we're going to talk about our webinar, but this is kind of just to remind folks what these animals have been going through to this stage. So you talked about us transitioning to a little colder weather. I think our next slide might reflect that. You see some snow on the ground here, but this is a pretty typical farm scene where the farmer's taking hay out to his cows. And if you look closely, these bales have been made with a baler that has net wrap. That plastic wrap. See how much smoother they are.
A little shiny surface.
Shinier on it. You see, you don't see stems of hay. I mean, it's kind of gift wrap, so to speak. And these balers have become much more popular over the years. You can actually bale hay faster than you could with the old twine string type bales, but especially as the bales weather, the bales tend to stay together a little better with net wrap. So this is something that you see common today going out. A lot of people use front end loaders. This gentleman's trying to be more efficient, take 2 out at a time, and so you see. I think our next slide, though, this is what we're talking about, that net wrap. You need to take that off of those bales. That is not good to the digestive system. I mean,
I can't see how that would.
No, you need to take that off. It'd be, I'm not sure what I compare it to, what we would eat as a diet, but that definitely doesn't need to go through the rumen and all. And so he's doing that, and when the weather gets tougher, that's harder to do. So you see the bale on the fork he's ready to feed, you see that net wraps off of it, and but in days of snow and ice, that stuff's not easy to get off. So it takes a little time to do that, and so these basically what I'm trying to lead up to here here is we are trying to take care of the nutritional needs of the animals, taking them harvested feed. Obviously, there's grass not growing now. We have to supply them with their needs. And what I want to lay the groundwork for our upcoming webinar is these animals, this is probably his highest stress time of the year for them because of the environmental conditions. They've gone through mud. Now we're getting into colder weather.
Yep. And they're getting ready to have babies.
So most cattle in this state, these animals are starting if they're somewhere in their last trimester of pregnancy, and as that calf grows and develops inside of them, their nutritional needs go up. So we've got Mother Nature giving them more requirements through weather and through reproduction.
Yep.
They're growing a calf, and just to give you an idea how much it changes, in that last 30 or so days of pregnancy, that calf, that fetus inside of them is growing a pound a day.
Wow, pound a day.
Pound a day. Now,
so how much feed would they have to eat just to keep that going? I mean,
well, it depends on their size. If you talk about dry matter, you're probably looking at 2 to 3% of their body weight in dry matter. So if you're feeding them dried hay versus, say, silage, are eating a little more water. Or if you're feeding them corn. So it depends on the diet, how much they'll eat. But a bigger cow is going to eat more. And the first thing she's going to do is take care of herself. So say she needs 30 pounds a day and you're only feeding her 20, what's really going to suffer is the reproduction side. She's going to keep herself functioning through her breathing, just normal activity. And if you're shortchanging anything, it's
you're shortchanging the calf.
The calf, yes, exactly. So we'll talk about this more as we go along. But this is a problem in that, you know, we forget what the hay was like when we made it last spring and summer. I mean, you know, depends on how you stored it. I mean, you saw 2 bales on that tractor. I don't know how good that hay is.
Right.
You know, I would encourage producers, if you haven't done it already, do a nutritional sample on that. You can take just like a soil sample. You can take dirt out of the field. You can take hay samples and get those analyzed. So, I mean, we should have done it before now, but if you do it now, you can get a gauge on
how much
what you should do for the rest of the winter. Exactly. So I know most farmers aren't going to be expert nutritionists, but between feed companies and extension and other specialists, there's people can help you with the diet. Now, what I would say to you is, if you know something about your hay, or you think you know something about your hay, your very best stuff should be fed around calving. Calving time, because her needs going up. If you're going to give cow lesser quality feed, actually the middle trimester, kind of while they're just kind of biding their time before the calf really starts growing, that's the time to do it. Unfortunately, for most spring calving herds, we've passed that time and we're getting into that last trimester. So it's important. So I would encourage farmers to do that. So if you figure out your hay's not as good, there's other strategies that you can do. I think our next slide shows, you know, I guess snow to me is a 4-letter word, but I would rather see snow than ice, and actually the heavy rain. To be truthful with you, a little bit of snow, cow can deal with that, but a heavy, say, 1-inch rain, that gets wet to their core. So I don't know what they're feeding here, but obviously they're giving them some supplemental feed. Now, I know most farmers don't like to spend more money than they have to, but corn is relatively inexpensive. I'm not going to say it's cheap, but compared to other feeds, and I'm not sure how much good hay is out there to be bought if you want to go buy more hay. And the answer is not feeding more of the same kind of hay if it's inferior. A cow's only going to eat so much. So you have to step up your game a little bit and feed a higher quality feed to make a difference. And I think our next slide shows a little bit of that. You know, you can't again see the bunk, but obviously these cows are trained enough to know, oh, we're going to get something good to eat. But corn is a great source of energy. If it's younger cattle, you may want to feed a little extra protein. But generally, this time of year, on mature animals, energy is the lacking factor. They need something to help keep warm, keep body condition on them. Now, don't want to get sidetracked too much, but I know some farmers this time of year are hesitant to feed extra feed. They'll sit there and say, well, I'm going to make calves too big.
Yeah.
Because the more that the cow eats, it does increase the weight of the calf.
Yeah.
But there is tons of research done by Ohio State and other land-grant universities that show, and this is a little bit of slang on my part, but you cannot starve calving yeast. In other words, I don't see many beef cows that are too fat, so fat that they're going to cause calving problems.
Right. I agree.
You can do more to control that problem by the genetics you use than how you feed them. And if you underfeed the cows, you're going to cause other problems. You may think you're helping the situation, but you are causing other problems. So I can't emphasize that enough. And that we can do a whole other subject of show on that. But
well, now before we get too far into that, the next topic of it, we talked about possibly hay being a shortage in earlier on.
Right.
Do you see that happening now, or do you think we've got enough hay for that's been cut and
I don't know. I think the weather, the next 30 to 45 days will have a lot to do with it. How cold it is. I can tell you that as it gets colder, they'll eat a lot of hay just to stay warm. So if we have a mild winter, which if you look at some of the long range weather forecasts, they are projecting comparatively we're going to have a relatively mild winter. But if that changes and we have, I would say it's too early to tell, but if I was a betting man, if the weather stays mild, we might be okay. I'm concerned we don't have enough good hay.
Good hay. Okay.
That's my biggest concern.
And that was because
now.
it was
so wet last spring. We didn't get hay made at a good time. So that would be my bigger concern.
Okay.
And if we do run short, supplementing with grain is a viable option.
Okay. Good.
So that's my. I'm not saying go bet on that, but that's kind of what I see it right now.
Right. Well, I know early on we were talking about because of the rain.
There may be some folks that are short.
We couldn't get 2 cuttings or whatever out of a lot of places.
There was not many fourth cuttings made this last year, so it could be a little short.
Yeah.
And like last year, winter really kind of went up to the 1st of May.
Yeah, it went along.
Yeah. So
it wasn't brutal, but it was long.
Yeah. Those are factors we just don't know yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So next slide, we talk about condition of the animals, and if I know most experienced cattlemen maybe not look at it this way formally, but there's points on the animal that we can tell how fat they are.
Yeah.
Down their back, do we see their backbone? And 2 and 3, we're talking about their pin bones. As you stand behind them, there's usually 2 points around their tail. That's like the backside of their skeleton.
Yeah.
The pins and the hooks or the hip bone. If you see those bones protruding, they're thin. They're thin. And the ribs, along their side, if you can see bone, that's and the brisket. If an animal's fat, usually they'll deposit fat in their lower brisket and the lower part of their neck. So if you're wanting to go out and objectively appraise your animals, those are the points you need to look at as far as determining how fat they are. Now, our next slide shows some pictorial demonstrations of it. It's what they call body condition scoring is a 1 to 9 scale.
Okay.
1 is emaciated thin. 9 is sumo wrestler fat. I mean, that's the difference. But
you don't want 1 or you don't want 9.
No, exactly. But for reproduction purposes, 5 and 6 are good spots. Now, let's kind of look at 5 and 6 versus 2. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you see the whitish cow. You see the ribs.
Yeah.
You see
looks really bad.
You see her hip bones sticking out.
Yeah, you see them sticking out there.
Okay.
Almost like number 3 there.
2 and 3.
Yeah, you can see that better.
You're going to compromise reproduction if they're at 2 or 3.
Yeah.
4 is kind of we're going over the edge. We're going over the edge. It's not good. 5 and 6 are ideal. 7 is starting to get a little bit fat. The happy medium is 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And but look how smooth they look. You don't see bones.
Right.
You don't see backbone. You don't see look at the difference in 6 versus 2.
Yep.
How much you can see skeletal features. And some of that may be breeding, but again, a lot of that is condition. And it's basically, if you're at a 6, you've got a little buffer for bad weather.
Yeah.
5s can become 4s in a rough winter.
Yeah.
In a rough winter. So I would say for the average producer to stay between 5 and 6 would be a nice target. But these are, it's hard to come up with good pictures, but this was about as good as I could find to show the differences in body condition and what it means. So you see these are in green grass and looks like warmer conditions. Let's put that mud under them that we showed in the early pictures.
Yeah.
And
halfway through winter.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to see the legs of animals today just covered in mud, and these cows, at least 5, 6, and 7, look pretty comfortable. So this is just a general reminder to pay attention to that and watch the impacts. But this is really important as we go into 2019 and thinking about the calves we're going to be creating for 2020.
Yeah.
So that's what was my point of emphasis there, that what we take to these cows now, as far as hay or grain, is going to affect how they look when the grass turns green, and we're trying to breed them for next year. So what's going to complicate this is now what's about ready to happen is our next picture is going to show newborn calves. And you can see this is obviously colder conditions. Looking at the terrain, this might be a picture from out west, but this calf was obviously born outside. You can see the bare spot on the ground where the cow's been laying down and going through the process. And this, to me, Duane, is one of the most phenomenal things you can see on a farm. How that cow has the instinct to get up, turn around, start cleaning that calf off. Right. At a hospital, we've got it's got the birth fluids and things on it, and it's cold enough that there's snow,
freezing.
So that and it's amazing what the cow's licking activity does to kick in the instincts of that calf. You think about the trauma that calf went through, being pushed through the birth canal, getting on the ground, and then now it's cold. That's one of Mother Nature's gifts. That the cow has the instinct to lick that calf off and getting that slime, so to speak, not to be too graphic, off of them, and then watch the calf. And the next slide, maybe not totally accurate in time, but then that calf has the instinct to get up and nurse. And that's really important, because Mother Nature does have a little gift for it in the form of colostrum. It's got more antibodies in it, so it's really important that calf is strong enough to get up and have the wherewithal to learn how to nurse. And that's to see all those instincts kick in, both on the cow side and the calves, really cool. I mean, it
is when they just plop out and there they are, and they're like, whoa, what happened here?
So if you don't set the table up now for the conditions to be right for that cow. Like that cow, that picture we showed of the calf nursing, that cow is okay condition-wise, but she doesn't need to be any thinner. You don't see her ribs. You don't see her ribs, but you see some hip bones. So, I don't know what age.
But she could have,
she could be drawn down a little bit from just pushing the calf. I mean, because that calf could have weighed. Generally, a cow will have 6 to 7% of her body weight. So if you take a 1,200-pound cow, that's probably a 70 to 85-pound calf. And so not just that, but all the birth fluids, and all
everything
that.
else.
So that cow, just the day she had that calf, could easily lose 100 pounds of gross body weight. So what I'm trying to do with all these slides is show, okay, this cow's been through a lot. She's been through mud. She's been through snow. How we're taking care of her nutritionally will decide how successful she'll be for you this next year. So I think it's extremely important. And when we talk about, okay, we've done all this, now our next slide talks about, or it depicts what I'm really worried about is when we get into the spring and summer months, of breeding season.
Right.
How successful is that bull on the right going to be about getting the cows bred to have big, healthy babies like you see
Yeah, that's behind.
them there? So, that's kind of a circle of life we're talking about here.
Yes,
So, we fondly remember the green grass and when we made hay, but now the proof is in the pudding. What are we doing now to help this cow? So, with all this background, I want to put a plug in for what you're going to help me with here in a few weeks, and that's our Ohio Beef Cattle School for 2019. I think our next slide, it talks about the agenda. It's a little harder to see, but basically we're talking about winter management of the cow herd to ensure a productive 2019, and that's what we've all been talking about here in this. It's scheduled for Tuesday, February the 5th, starting at 7 o'clock, and it's going to be a webinar format, and we're offering this to different extension offices around the state, and at the time of this taping, I think we have 12 or 13 different locations signed up. There'll be more, but this is the format of the program. If you notice, the first little bullet there talking about analyzing the current situation, which is kind of what we just did.
Right.
We went through that, but we have some experts that are going to share with us on the program. Dr. Steve Boyles, our longtime state beef extension specialist, is going to talk about nutritional requirements of the beef female through that last trimester through breeding season. So we talked about when should they get their best feed. It's that last third of pregnancy to the first 90 days nursing a calf to get them bred. That's the critical half of the year. Our next topic we're going to talk about is Dr. Alvaro Garcia is going to, or Garcia Guerra is going to talk about the impacts of how we develop these heifers and what that does as far as their success as breeding females. Basically, we've been talking about the cow, but this is both for the virgin heifer and the cow. Nutritionally, we can set these animals up for reproductive success with a lot through nutrition. The last thing, Dr. Justin Kiefer, the clinical vet for the animal science department, we showed those baby calf pictures, managing calf health born in distress situations. When that calf's born into snow or mud, they're under stress. So he's going to talk about some of the vaccinations and the importance of colostrum, what we can do. So that's the format. You're going to be helping me with that, and producers will be able to type in questions to the speakers in the chat room, and
that's right.
So that's what we wanted to emphasize today.
Well, it's all great topics. If somebody wanted to go see this webinar, how would they go about that? Do they contact the county office? Contact
your local extension office, and it may not be as timely, but after that February 5th date, at some point we will tape the production and we'll put it on our website. But if you go to beef.osu.edu, our beef team website, we'll have a list of the locations as we get them, and then again, eventually it'll be on our website as well. But call your local extension office.
All right, great. Any last words that we should be thinking about as this winter time?
Just do what you can to help the animals. Again, your actions today, what you offer those animals, are going to have a big impact for the next 12 months.
All right, great. Well, our time is up. Sorry, I've got a little frog in the throat, but until next month, we'll see everyone later.